So talking about actors that are outside of LA, what do you think some of the best guidance that you might be able to offer them is if they're going to continue to work outside of LA and compete for larger projects? What do you think some tips might be?
Well, I think that the world is so great today. I mean, the internet, come on. I mean, look at Justin Bieber. Who knew him? Right? He does his own little film on YouTube, and millions and millions of dollars, and how famous is he? I think today you could be anywhere in the world and you have the opportunity. I think the thing that's really important is you got to be proactive. I mean, no one's going to come knock on your door and say, hey, will you do this tape? We'd really love to have it. But you have the opportunity of doing it a lot of different ways. You do a short film for no money, put it up on YouTube. Casting directors, people don't realize this, we go through YouTube constantly. And the reason why we go through YouTube constantly is if we're looking for something, we want to discover that person. We want to know about that person. So most of the really good casting directors are really, internet savvy. They know how to go to YouTube. The other thing is you can do any kind of demo that you want to do. You can just email it to me. You can go on the internet, you can either IMDb Pro or you just look me up. You can get an address. It's going to come to the office. It may not come to me personally, but it's going to come. So I think in terms of the internet, it's created a world for creative people that's just fabulous. You can do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter where you live. In fact, when I did Edge of Darkness with Mel Gibson, the lead girl in it is from Australia. She never once came to America. I had met her previously, but she never came to meet Martin Campbell. She did one reading. To be honest, it wasn't great. I called up and said, you know what, I want you to do it again, but I want you to talk directly to the director because it's just not working. She did it a second time. She got the role. The first time that director ever saw her, we were all in Boston. We were doing the first table read with Mel.
Wow.
She never interviewed for the job, ever. Now, we got lucky. Mel and she had a lot of, they clicked together and the director liked her. Anything could have happened. But just to logistics, because there's no way she was doing a play. There was no way we could fly her from Australia and he wasn't going to Australia. So almost everything now is done. Even if you were living in LA, the director would not be meeting you. You'd be seeing you. The advantage you would have is that you would be taping with me and I would give you specific direction. But other than that, and we try to give that anyway.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, when we tape outside of where we are, we usually give a list of instructions and how to do it. We help you along. I mean, you guys have to make us look good. If you don't do a good job, I'm going to be casting it forever. I want to get in, I want to get out. So, I need to have that happen.
I want to talk about this idea of the movie star. I think because of what we're talking about here, it's that much easier. The tools are right in front of you to get yourself out there, but it's that much harder because everything's so saturated. Whereas before, you had this smaller base of people that are trying to be actors. Now, anybody can be an actor, a filmmaker, a musician, and they don't even have to be good. They just have to be popular. And there's a lot of talk about how who's the new Brad Pitt, who's the new Tom Cruise, who's the new Julia Roberts, and I think a lot from the outside perspective is we see a lot of people who are famous for 15 minutes and then gone. They don't have that sustaining star power. So do you feel like really like that whole idea of the classic Hollywood star, starlet, or icon is gone, or do you feel like it's changing? Or
I think the thing that's really interesting is that when I first started, the people who were stars are still the stars today.
right.
It hasn't changed. Bob De Niro, Brad Pitt, whoever you want to name.
Sure.
I think the thing that you find is because the media is so fast, the MTV kind of version of everything has allowed a lot of people to become popular, but they don't really retain anything because in order to have stability, you really have to have a lot of talent. And sometimes those people just don't have it.
Right.
And they come and they go, as I think, well, they should, because it's really, I think, hard to be an actor, and I think it's really hard to sustain and to grow and to show that you can do different things and to get those opportunities. And the people that get to do it really do stay. I mean, you look at some of the actors, like you look at Michael Fassbender or Tom Hardy, if you've just heard of them. I mean, I've known them for 10 years. So it isn't like all of a sudden these guys just emerged. They had a whole body of work. I mean, the greatest example of that is Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Sure.
I mean, I've known Philip Seymour Hoffman since college, and for 10 years, no one knew who he was. Nobody. He sat in New York, he did theater, he worked all the time, no one knew who he was. So most of the people that tend to be successful are those kinds of people that kind of study, they do their work, and then it's not based on a look or that they're sexy and they're cute, it's based on really a body of work.
We know who's hot right now, obviously, but who do you feel like, you know, you named Philip Seymour Hoffman, who do you feel like really is that kind of new school of star?
I think Jeremy Renner's one of those guys. I think Michael Fassbender's one of those guys. Tom Hardy is one of those guys. There are a lot of them now, which is kind of nice. You know, I think the thing that's interesting is like you look at Justin Timberlake, who, you know, 5 years ago people wouldn't even take seriously, and now you look at his body of work, not only his music that continues to grow, but you look at how well he's done in film, and it's amazing. So I think the thing is that everyone has to be really open-minded, because you never know what's going to happen, and that's what's fun about my job. That's really the fun of my job, is you just never know, and it's fun because I get to try things. I get to take a man's role and make it a female role, and I get to do vice versa, and no one out there knows it when they see the film, but I know it, and it's fun to do that.
Yeah.
It's really fun, and then anything can happen today. It's like the Wild West. You just never know.
And I see a correlation there between that. The people that you named are people that their body of work is something respectable, and then the way they live their lives outside of, you know, their acting is also respectable. Like they tend to stay out of, you know, the light and things like that.
Yeah, I think you know, it's like any job. You know, you have to be serious at what you're doing, and you have to work hard at it. And the minute you kind of start having a lot of parties and doing this kind of, it's not going to work.
Right.
So it wouldn't work if you were working at anywhere. You have to be really focused, and the competition in acting is enormous. It's enormous. It's something I've never done. I don't think I could ever do it, but I'm very respectful of it. But it's difficult. You have to want to do it. I say to people, you have to want to do this more than anything. You can't be that guy walking down the street, and Bruce Weber sees you and says, "Oh, I'd love you to be in my Levi, you know, shot," and all of a sudden you're a star. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
As an indie filmmaker, one of the challenges is you have to attach a name before you can get the funding, but you can't attach the name until you get the funding. So, and of course, doing indie films, so we want, you know, we look to usually have one name maybe that will carry the film enough to get us the funding. So, as a casting director, do you ever work with, or do you know people who work with indie films in that way, where we say, hey, we just need this one name, and here's some, you know, here's some suggestions we have. Do you have any other suggestions? And because I know normally you guys work, you know, per role, how much, you know, you get paid for how many roles you cast. So.
Well, everyone, the thing about, I'm president of the Casting Society, there are 550 members. Everyone works differently. Certain people don't do it unless they're paid for everything. There are other people who, you know, will work with somebody. I always say to people, if you're looking for somebody to cast your film, you don't have a lot of money, look at the casting directors and who works for them. Because the person directly under the top casting directors is always good. Always good. And they too are looking for an opportunity. They want to be a casting director. So I always say, look at those people in those offices, and those are the people that you should try to go, because for them, it's a challenge. At the same point, they're good enough to have worked in either my office or Ella Lewis's office or Ray's office, or whoever's office for a certain amount of years. They're good. And so it's an up for them, and it's a plus for the person hiring them. Because the casting directors, the biggest problem with the casting directors that work all the time, like myself, is you just don't have the time to really do that. Because you're always doing something. And that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time. And then there are some casting directors who like to produce. I'm not one of them, but there are ones that will. And if you researched it a little bit on IMDb, you could find those casting directors, and then you can go to them and say, look, you know, here's my script, and you can come on as a producer. And a lot of them really want to do that. So there are a lot of different ways of getting somebody.
Thank you. That's great information.